You may be here because you are standing at an invisible threshold. You have done the healing, endured the silence, and survived the long stretches of uncertainty. Yet lately something feels different. The questions that once haunted you. Was this real? Was I imagining it? Did I misread everything? No longer carry the same weight. Instead, you may feel a strange stillness beneath the ache, a subtle inner knowing that refuses to be explained away. The waiting has been exhausting, the purging relentless, and the emotional cycles have tested your faith. And yet, despite everything, something inside you has never fully let go, because on a soul level, you sense that this phase is not ending randomly, it is ending with purpose. In today's video, we move beyond surface explanations and into the energetic mechanics of physical reunion itself. We will explore what actually shifts before reunion happens in the physical world, why the connection begins to feel quieter instead of louder, and what it truly means when the frequency changes. This is not about chasing signs or forcing outcomes. It is about understanding the deep, multidimensional process that unfolds when two souls stop operating as separate fields and begin synchronizing at the energetic level. If you have felt the static clearing, the emotional charge softening, or a calm certainty settling into your body without logical proof, this conversation will help you understand why. By the end of this video, you will no longer see separation as failure, delay, or loss. You will recognize it as preparation. You will understand why the certainty arrives before the reunion, why peace replaces longing, and why the soul always knows before the mind can catch up. This message is not here to convince you, it is here to activate recognition. And if you feel something quietly stirring as you listen, that is not coincidence. It is your soul remembering its timing, and once that recognition begins, nothing about this journey will look the same again. Section 1. The End of Waiting and the Birth of Wholeness. The first and most foundational shift that both twins experience is a complete transformation in their relationship with waiting. For much of the journey, waiting feels like the center of everything. Longing shapes your days and nights. You look for signs in numbers, dreams, memories, and conversations. You search for meaning in every pause and every delay. Beneath it all lives a quiet belief that something essential is missing, that you are not fully complete until the other returns. This state of waiting is not weakness, it is part of the initiation. It teaches awareness, patience, and devotion. But it is not where the journey ends. As reunion draws closer, something deeply paradoxical occurs. Both twins stop waiting, not because they are tired, bitter, or resigned, not because they have abandoned hope. They stop waiting because something inside them becomes whole. The nervous system relaxes, the heart stabilizes, the urgency dissolves. There is no longer a sense of life being on hold. Happiness is no longer postponed into the future. It becomes anchored in the present self. Peace no longer depends on contact, confirmation, or outcome. The twin is no longer unconsciously assigned the role of savior, completion, or emotional regulator. Instead, they are recognized for what they truly are, a sacred gift, not a requirement for survival. This moment is the ego's final test. The ego has survived the longing, the pain, the separation, and even the spiritual growth. But what it cannot survive is wholeness. When attachment dissolves and identity no longer depends on the other, the ego loses its leverage. And it is precisely here, in this quiet inner completion, that the energy clears for return. The divine feminine typically arrives at this state through self-love, embodiment, and spiritual mastery. She chooses herself fully. She inhabits her body, her joy, her purpose, and her connection with God or Source. She no longer chases union from lack. She becomes the embodiment of union within herself. The divine masculine arrives here differently. He reaches this point when distraction no longer works and avoidance loses its power. Silence becomes unavoidable. He can no longer outrun his inner truth. In that stillness, he is forced inward, and through that inward turn, wholeness begins to form. At this stage, both twins make the same choice. They choose themselves not selfishly, but truthfully. And paradoxically, it is only when they choose themselves fully that they are finally able to choose each other without fear, dependency, or distortion. Before we move into the next section, take a moment to pause and feel into what was just shared. This phase is subtle, and many people rush past it, without realizing how sacred it is. Ask yourself honestly, where has waiting softened inside you, and where are you beginning to feel whole without needing anything outside of yourself to change? Reflection here is powerful, because awareness is what stabilizes this shift. If something resonated, leave a comment sharing what you noticed within your own journey, or simply type, "I choose wholeness," as an affirmation that you are no longer waiting for life to begin. Section 2. Synchronization of energy and the merging of timelines. When inner completion becomes stable, when wholeness is no longer something you reach for, but something you live, the energetic tether between you and your twin naturally tightens. This is not forced, it is not imagined, it is the quiet result of two inner worlds finally reaching coherence. As this stabilization settles in, the body and the subconscious begin to respond before the mind can explain what is happening. Sleep patterns often shift first. You may find yourself waking at unusual but consistent hours, as if an internal clock has been reset. Dreams become more vivid, more symbolic, sometimes unmistakably shared in tone or theme. Even if you cannot remember the details, you wake with the sensation that something meaningful occurred, that you were not alone in the dream space. During waking hours, your rhythms begin to align in subtler ways. Bursts of energy arrive unexpectedly. Fatigue lifts without reason. Focus sharpens, then softens, in cycles that feel guided rather than random. At night, you may feel energy moving through your body, gentle waves, warmth in the chest, pressure at the crown, or a calm pulsing through the nervous system. At times, the sensation of your twin's presence becomes so real, it feels as if they are beside you, even in physical absence. This is not longing, it is resonance. The bond is no longer stretching across distance, it is folding inward, collapsing space through frequency. Alongside these internal shifts, the external world begins to mirror the alignment. Numbers appear with insistence. Familiar sequences repeat: 1000, 111, 222, mirrored digits that seem to follow you through daily life. Birthdays resurface, dates overlap, names, places, or symbols tied to your connection show up without effort. These signs are not meant to convince you. They appear because the calibration is already underway. This is not coincidence. It is synchronization. The universe does not rush reunion. It waits patiently until both frequencies are stable enough to hold it. When one rises too quickly or the other lags behind, the system self-corrects. But when both reach the same vibrational range, rooted, embodied, and complete within themselves, the timelines begin to merge naturally. At that point, physical reunion is no longer something that must be chased or orchestrated. It becomes sustainable. This phase is not dramatic on the surface, yet it is profound at the energetic level. It is the quiet locking in of alignment, the moment when two paths, once running parallel, finally recognize they are moving at the same speed, in the same direction, toward the same reality. Section 3. The simultaneous Great Purge. Once resonance locks into place, a powerful and unmistakable clearing begins. This phase is not subtle. It moves through life with precision, dismantling what can no longer coexist with the frequency of union. Externally, things may appear to destabilize all at once. Jobs that once felt secure suddenly end or lose meaning. Friendships drift apart without conflict yet with finality. Living situations, routines, and environments shift as if life itself is rearranging the board. What often surprises people most is that this process happens to both twins simultaneously, even if they are physically separated or unaware of each other's circumstances. This is not punishment or loss. It is alignment. Anything built on fear, ego, self-betrayal, or compromise cannot remain when union-level frequency comes online. Structures that once supported survival consciousness simply cannot hold the higher truth now, asking to be embodied. As the external world clears, the internal purge follows. Emotional release arrives in waves. Grief surfaces for old identities you once needed to survive. Tears come without a clear story attached to them. You may mourn versions of yourself that worked hard, endured silently, or settled for less, not because they were wrong, but because their role is complete. During this phase, the divine masculine releases deep layers of shame, self-judgment, and avoidance. Old coping mechanisms fall away. The need to hide, distract, or delay dissolves under the weight of truth. At the same time, the divine feminine releases martyrdom, overgiving, and long-held resentment. The pattern of sacrificing herself to maintain connection no longer survives in her system. This is the moment where the false self begins to dissolve, the persona built to adapt, endure, and survive in misaligned conditions. What emerges in its place is quieter, steadier, and more authentic. The true self does not chase. It does not cling. It stands rooted, clear, and whole. This purge can feel like an ending, but it is not destruction. It is preparation. Space is being created for a life that matches who you have become, not who you once had to be. If you feel old versions of your life falling away, if doors are closing without resistance, if you sense something new forming beneath the surface, you are not alone in this process. Section 4. The clearing of third parties and karmic obstacles. As fear dissolves at the core level, everything that once fed on it begins to lose power. Distractions no longer hold the same pull. Karmic partners, those connections formed for lessons rather than longevity, gradually lose relevance without drama or conflict. Addictions, whether emotional, relational, or behavioral, loosen their grip. External interference fades, not because it is fought against, but because there is nothing left for it to attach to. This clearing does not happen through force or rejection. It happens through recognition. Both twins reach a point where they see, with unmistakable clarity, that no one else can occupy that sacred inner space where truth resides. Attempts to substitute, replace, or avoid the connection no longer work, not because of guilt or obligation, but because the soul no longer accepts what is misaligned. At this stage, the lesson is complete. The role each karmic connection once played has been fulfilled. The teacher exits quietly. There is no need for blame, resentment, or explanation. What once served growth naturally steps aside when growth has occurred. This is how true karmic resolution works. It ends without chaos. What remains is clarity. The mental fog lifts. The inner negotiations stop. There are no more excuses disguised as circumstances, and no more barriers disguised as other people. The energy no longer fragments itself trying to manage fear, loyalty, or avoidance. It consolidates. The path opens not because conditions become perfect, but because fear is no longer fueling illusion. When fear leaves the system, distortion collapses. What once felt complicated becomes simple. What once felt blocked becomes accessible. Alignment replaces effort. This is not the removal of choice, it is the return of truth. And from this place, forward movement becomes inevitable. If you have made it this far, pause for a moment and feel what is shifting inside you. This is not just information you are hearing, it is something your nervous system and your soul are recognizing. Take a breath and reflect on what has fallen away recently, what no longer holds weight, and what clarity is quietly replacing confusion. You may notice that your story mirrors parts of this unfolding more closely than you expected. If you feel called, share your experience in the comments. Your reflections may be the confirmation someone else needs today. Or, if words feel unnecessary, simply type, "I release fear and choose truth" as an affirmation. Let it be a signal to yourself and to the universe that you are ready for what comes next. Section 5. Shared mission and the call to service. When the inner path has been cleared and the confusion of the journey settles, purpose does not arrive loudly. It activates quietly, decisively, from within. There is a felt sense of readiness, as though the soul has finally been given permission to move forward. At this stage, life no longer revolves around searching for meaning. Meaning begins to express itself naturally through action. The divine feminine steps into creation, healing, and intuitive leadership with ease rather than effort. Her energy is no longer fragmented or reactive. She creates from clarity, heals through presence, and leads through deep inner knowing. Her intuition becomes a guiding force not only for herself, but for others who encounter her frequency. She does not need to announce her role. Her alignment speaks for her. The divine masculine simultaneously steps into integrity, direction, and grounded authority. His strength becomes stable rather than defensive, intentional rather than impulsive. He moves with purpose, guided by truth and responsibility. His authority is no longer about proving worth, but about holding structure for what is meant to be built. He becomes a steady foundation through which vision can manifest in the physical world. At this point, the union reveals its true nature. It is no longer experienced as fantasy, longing, or escape. It reveals itself as service. Love matures into contribution. Together, they anchor light not as an abstract concept, but as lived example. Their connection becomes functional, purposeful, and quietly transformative. As this alignment deepens, external reality responds. Work paths begin to converge without force. Opportunities align organically. Locations shift, sometimes unexpectedly, placing both individuals exactly where they need to be. What once required effort now unfolds with precision. The mission itself becomes the magnet, drawing resources, people, and circumstances into place. Section 6. Forgiveness and the dissolution of the past. At this stage of the journey, something subtle yet profound occurs. Pain begins to lose its charge. What once triggered strong emotional reactions no longer carries the same weight. Memories may still exist, but they no longer wound. Silence no longer stings. The absence that once felt unbearable becomes neutral, even peaceful. Ghosting, separation, and the years that felt lost begin to soften, not through justification, but through understanding. Forgiveness does not arrive as a dramatic conversation or a long explanation. It happens quietly, often without words. There is no need to revisit every wound or relive every misunderstanding. Blame simply evaporates. The nervous system relaxes, and the heart recognizes that holding on no longer serves any purpose. What once demanded answers now asks only for release. The divine masculine experiences this as self-forgiveness. He releases the weight of regret, guilt, and self-judgment that kept him bound to the past. He understands, at a soul level, that survival, fear, and unhealed wounds shaped his choices. In forgiving himself, he frees his energy to move forward with integrity and presence. The divine feminine, in turn, releases the belief that love must be proven through suffering. She lets go of the need to endure pain in order to be worthy of connection. Her forgiveness is not about excusing behavior, but about reclaiming her power, her peace, and her emotional sovereignty. As this inner work completes, the past dissolves. It no longer defines identity, timing, or possibility. What once felt like an ending reveals itself as preparation. In the space where resentment once lived, a new beginning becomes possible, unburdened, clear, and rooted in truth. Section 7. Physical mirroring and soul play. As alignment deepens beyond the internal realms, it begins to express itself through the physical body and everyday life. The inner harmony between souls starts to mirror outwardly, almost effortlessly. Bodies respond to this shift. Posture changes. Facial expressions soften. There is a sense of embodiment that feels more natural, more at ease. Without conscious planning, styles begin to reflect one another, as if the same current is shaping expression on both sides. Habits start to synchronize in subtle but noticeable ways. Sleep rhythms, daily routines, and even the timing of certain actions begin to align. Choices feel instinctive rather than deliberate. One person reaches for a book, a piece of music, or a topic of interest, only to discover the other is doing the same. Shared themes appear again and again, not because they were discussed, but because the inner frequency is now matched. This phase carries a distinctly playful quality. There is lightness where there was once intensity. Curiosity replaces pressure. The connection feels magical, not in an unrealistic way, but in a grounded sense of wonder. Life begins to feel interactive again, as though the universe is gently winking, offering small confirmations that alignment is real and unfolding. The universe uses form to communicate. Physical mirroring becomes a visible language, a way of saying that the internal work has landed. What once existed only in feeling, intuition, or spiritual insight now expresses itself through tangible experience. These reflections are not meant to be analyzed or chased. They are meant to be noticed, enjoyed, and trusted. A simple yet powerful example of this phase can be seen in everyday moments that feel almost childlike in their surprise. You might find yourself drawn to a new style of clothing, a particular color, or a way of presenting yourself that feels more authentic than ever before, only to later notice that your counterpart has made a similar shift without any discussion. Perhaps you pick up a book that suddenly calls to you, start listening to a certain kind of music, or adopt a new daily habit, walking at sunrise, journaling before sleep, changing the foods you crave, and then discover that the same choices are unfolding on the other side. There is no effort to copy, no attempt to match. It simply happens. These moments feel light and playful, almost like a quiet game the universe is orchestrating, reminding you that alignment has moved beyond thought and into lived experience. Instead of creating anxiety, these reflections bring a gentle smile, a sense of ease, and the knowing that the connection is now expressing itself naturally through form, rhythm, and joy. Section 8. Timelessness and fifth dimensional awareness. At this stage of the journey, something subtle yet profound begins to shift in the way you experience reality itself. Linear time, once the silent authority governing your emotions, expectations, and sense of progress, loses its grip. The pressure of when dissolves. The anxiety of how long fades. You are no longer measuring your life through calendars, delays, or perceived distance. Separation, which once felt heavy and defining, becomes strangely irrelevant, not because the connection has weakened, but because it has moved beyond form. What once felt absent now feels ever present. The bond is no longer dependent on proximity, communication, or visible movement. It is experienced as continuous, unbroken, and eternal. You begin to operate from the soul level rather than the emotional mind. From this perspective, distance is no longer something that creates loss. It becomes symbolic, a teaching tool rather than a threat. You understand that two souls can be deeply unified even while appearing separate in the physical world. The connection is no longer something you reach for, it is something you rest inside. Urgency gives way to patience, not because you have learned to wait, but because waiting is no longer required. There is a quiet inner knowing now, a calm certainty that nothing is missing and nothing has gone wrong. The future does not feel uncertain. It feels familiar. This is fifth dimensional awareness, a state where trust replaces striving, where faith is embodied rather than hoped for. You are no longer chasing outcomes or timelines, because at the deepest level of your being, you already know it is done. Section 9. The return of joy. Joy returns quietly at first, without explanation or external cause. It does not arrive because circumstances have resolved or because answers have finally appeared. It comes simply because the soul has lightened. You notice moments of laughter rising naturally again, a softness in your chest, a sense that life no longer feels like something you must endure or manage, but something you are allowed to enjoy. This joy is not forced optimism or spiritual bypassing. It is genuine. It flows through ordinary moments, conversation, creativity, silence, movement. You feel present again, engaged, alive in a way that does not depend on outcomes. Life regains its color, its playfulness, its subtle magic. Joy becomes the landing strip for reunion because it is the highest attractor, not longing, not effort, not pain. Joy signals completion rather than lack. It tells the universe that you are no longer waiting to receive love. You are already living inside it. From this frequency, alignment happens effortlessly. As joy stabilizes, the masculine feels something heavy begin to dissolve. Guilt loosens its grip. Self-punishment fades. The weight of past choices softens into understanding. He no longer feels defined by what he could not do before. Joy gives him permission to return without shame. At the same time, the feminine radiates ease. Not anticipation, not vigilance. Ease. Her energy becomes open, playful, and magnetic. She is no longer holding space through endurance. She is holding space through embodiment. Her joy is felt before it is seen. This joy is not a reward at the end of the journey. It is the signal that the journey has integrated. It is the frequency that says the heart is safe again, the soul is home again, and love no longer feels heavy. Section 10. Heart Chakra, Activation and Gratitude. As this phase unfolds, the body begins to respond before the mind can fully interpret what is happening. Physical sensations emerge gently but unmistakably. A warmth spreads through the chest, a feeling of expansion, as though the heart is breathing on its own. At times, there is a subtle magnetic pull, an inward draw that anchors you deeper into yourself rather than outward toward another. These sensations are not imagined. They are the body's response to energetic alignment. The heart chakra, long shaped by protection, contraction, or restraint, begins to reopen in a new way, not with vulnerability rooted in fear, but with strength rooted in safety. The heart no longer braces itself against loss. It prepares itself for resonance. Gratitude then begins to flood the system, often unexpectedly. Not just gratitude for love, clarity, or connection, but even for the pain, even for the confusion, even for the seasons that once felt unbearable. You start to see that nothing was wasted. Every moment of ache carved space. Every delay refined discernment. Every heartbreak taught the heart how to expand without breaking. This gratitude is not intellectual, it is cellular. It moves through the nervous system like relief. The body exhales what it has been holding for years. Forgiveness happens naturally, without effort or explanation. The past no longer feels like something to heal, it feels like something that has completed its work. Through this process, the heart recalibrates itself for union, not by reopening old wounds, but by upgrading its capacity. It becomes capable of holding love without fear, connection without attachment, intimacy without self-abandonment. The heart shifts from survival to coherence. This is not the heart of longing, this is the heart of readiness, the heart that knows it is safe to love fully because it is already whole. Section 11. The sacred stillness before manifestation. There comes a moment on this journey when silence finally arrives, not as absence, not as loss, and not as waiting, but as a deep, grounded certainty that settles into the body and the soul at once. This silence does not feel hollow. It feels complete. It carries weight, presence, and calm authority. It is the stillness that only arrives when the inner argument has ended, and the soul no longer needs to ask questions of the universe. At this stage, the external signs begin to slow, sometimes almost disappearing altogether, not because the connection has weakened, but because the signs have fulfilled their purpose. They were guides for the mind when faith wavered, reminders for the heart when fear tried to take over. Now they are no longer required. Both twins have already said yes internally. The agreement has been made beneath thought, beneath emotion, beneath personality. It is a soul-level consent that does not need validation or reassurance. Doubt dissolves naturally here, not through effort, affirmation, or spiritual discipline, but because it no longer has a place to stand. The questions that once looped endlessly, when, how, will this happen? Is this real, lose their emotional charge. They fall away quietly, like leaves dropping from a tree at the exact moment they are meant to. What remains is a calm knowing that does not rush, does not chase, and does not seek confirmation. This is the paradox of manifestation. When the need for proof disappears, creation accelerates. When the nervous system relaxes, reality reorganizes. When attachment softens, timelines collapse. The sacred stillness before manifestation is not passive. It is profoundly active beneath the surface. Energies are locking into place. Paths are aligning. The unseen is moving faster than the visible ever could. Nothing feels urgent here, yet everything feels imminent. You are no longer watching the door. You are no longer checking the clock. You are simply present, anchored, and receptive. And it is precisely from this space, this quiet certainty, that what has been forming for so long finally takes shape in the physical world. As union moves from concept into lived experience, life begins to reorganize itself without force or struggle. External circumstances shift not through effort, but through alignment. Paths that once felt scattered start to converge. Decisions feel clearer. Presence stabilizes. You are no longer bracing for what might happen next, because something within you has already settled into knowing. The fear of rejection dissolves at its root. There is nothing left to defend, nothing to prove. Transparency replaces armor. Communication becomes natural, grounded, and honest, not because perfection has been reached, but because safety now lives inside the self. The nervous system relaxes, the heart stays open. Love no longer feels like a risk. The masculine steps forward as the bridge connecting vision to action, intention to form. The feminine becomes the sanctuary holding space, truth, and emotional coherence. These are not roles of dominance or sacrifice, but of balance. Each polarity stands whole, and together they create stability rather than tension. As this integration deepens, the body responds. Health improves, energy steadies, sleep restores. The sense of home is no longer tied to a place, a person, or an outcome. It becomes an internal state. Wherever you are anchored. Wherever you go, you bring peace with you. And when physical reunion arrives, it does not announce itself with drama. It comes simply, quietly, powerfully, not as a performance for the world, but as recognition between two beings who already know. The twin flame is no longer an idea or a longing. It becomes lived reality, breathing beside you, laughing with you, creating in the ordinary moments that now feel sacred. This is unity embodied. Not the end of a journey, but the beginning of a shared life rooted in presence, truth, and love. If this message resonates, I invite you to leave a comment with this exact quote: "I choose unity through wholeness, not waiting." And if you feel called, also type unity to seal this intention. Please remember to like this video, share it with someone who may be walking this path silently, and watch the video below to continue the journey together. One message, one moment, one seed can awaken an entire timeline. Thank you for walking this path with me. You are not alone.